Excellent. Well, here we are back with another episode of the NoBondsCast here at Beck Bode. I'm here with Jim Bode, my partner. I'm Ben Beck, and we're here today, just to talk about a bunch of stuff. Maybe first and foremost, it's the summertime now, and things are supposed to slow down a little bit. It doesn't seem that way. Does it seem that way to you?
No, not the last couple of weeks, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the last couple of weeks from a personal side, you have graduations and everyone's thinking about what they're going to do for the summer. Last week, we had our mid-year employee, what we call on-site, where we bring everyone within the organization together and we do some on-site training. So I would say, if anything right now, things are getting a little busier.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun, by the way. So we were up in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, at a really great site last week, and we flew in everybody from everywhere, right? We flew in our Michigan team from our Traverse City office. We flew in client success manager, Ashley, from Las Vegas, Nevada. We had people coming down from Maine. We had the entire team in Portsmouth to meet for the day and a half to talk about, what did we talk about?
Yeah, well, let's just start where we started. The morning of, there's some new office space coming to the Portsmouth area, which was pretty exciting. And then we met and we talked a lot about what the purpose of having a financial advisor is and what the role of a financial advisor is in today's world.
Yeah, right. So one of the things that we do from a training perspective on a regular basis, right? We have this series that we call Strategy University. And Strategy University implies, right, that it's all about the investment strategy, but it's really a lot less about managing money, and it's more about how we operate as financial advisors, right? And all the little things that, depending on your tenure at the firm and your experience, you may not have come across a lot of these different things, right? And so we have, I think we're up now to, it's an 8-week course or 8-week process where we talk about various things that we face as a financial advisor, and we use it as a training. It just so happened we used the last module in our strategy use session.
Yeah, and it was nice to do it in person. I think it was the first time in this session that we were all able to meet and discuss in person the topic of, what does a financial advisor do? Like, what is our role for our clients? And to have 20, 25 people sitting around discussing that, I think was really, really powerful. And that's everyone within the organization, right? It doesn't matter if they were the client success on the client success team, or whether they're in our operations and trading department, or they are financial advisors. We all need to understand what our role is.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. What did you get out of it? What did you get out of that exercise? What does a financial advisor do?
Yeah, what number one, as one of the managing partners, you being the other one within the company, what I was really thrilled about is there's a lot of consistency within our organization with what the role of the financial advisor is and what we do on a daily basis for our clients. And I would say, from the outside looking in, a lot of people think that our role is, we might put together a financial plan for clients, or we might introduce a stock strategy for our clients. But if everyone could have peeled back the onion and kind of sat in the side of the corner and looked at what our advisors were saying that they felt their role is every day, I think it would have made people really, really excited to be working with our team. And we heard everything from getting rid of some of the confusion that might be happening in the industry, the noise that you might be hearing that's going on, to we help them make sound financial decisions and help them keep emotional out of investing. So there is a whole really consistent answers that our team was given, which made me really happy.
Yeah.
What about yourself?
Yeah, well, I think it's a fantastic exercise, because kind of what you're talking about, we deal with the public, right? And depending on a particular person's experience with money, with previous financial advisors in their past, by the time they get to us, they may have a very interesting or unique thought process on what a financial advisor actually does, right?
It brings back a great story. I remember early on in our careers, we were referred to, who's still a client of ours nowadays, and we went to lunch with him, and he sat down with you and I, and one of the first things he said to us is, he's like, Ben and Jim, I already know what you're going to say. We have a personal connection. I'm going to be your client.
I don't remember this person. You keep going.
And really? Okay. So as we go through the process, we had to take a step back and say, actually, no, you have no idea what we're about to tell you. You have no idea what we're about to go through from whether it's the planning side or the investment side. And we still work with him and his family today. We can get into specifics at another time. But the reality was, in our industry, there's this idea that every advisor is created equal. No matter what you're doing, you're going to be offered the same level of services, the same type of planning, the same expectations across the board. And the reality is, that's absolutely wrong. That is wrong. Not all advisors are created equal. The way we view the world and the way that we use the industry to help benefit our clients is actually pretty unique. Really unique.
Yeah, the way I look at it too is that your financial life over the next 20, 30, 40 plus years, depending on how old you are, is ultimately, the outcome of that is determined, right, by a series of decisions that you make over that time period, right? And so none of that really has to do with what the S&P 500 is doing today or what your brother-in-law brought up at Thanksgiving about Bitcoin or something like that. It really has everything to do with just like some of the best sports teams out there, the ones that win consistently aren't necessarily the ones that are hitting home runs every time they get up to the plate. They're the ones that limit the amount of mistakes that they make through long periods of time. And so when I think about the role of a financial advisor, I really think about someone that you have in your life that you've come over time to trust their advice, right? And that really helps you build resilience against things that you really shouldn't be doing over the course of time, right? I don't want to position it as a negative, but it's a fact that we are all human beings, right? We have this impulse within us to flee from perceived danger. And, but when it comes to investing, there's danger around us all the time, right? I mean, and there's that with that, we're prone to make mistakes. We're prone to make decisions that aren't in our best interest because of a potential reaction to this fear we have. And so the role of an advisor is multifaceted, absolutely. But I think the biggest, right, is that decision making over long periods of time that every single human being needs is just vitally important.
Yeah, you just said a word that really jumps out, and one of the things that I say is the hardest part of my job as an advisor, and potentially yours as well, is the word of trust. And establishing trust is what we try to do each and every day, so that when those decisions are being made, that our clients believe that we're acting in their best interest all the time. Yeah. And that was one of the things that we discussed last week with all of our staff was, what can we do to help speed up establishing trust, which I think is probably the hardest part of our job.
Yeah. I tell you what, I mean, that's an interesting discussion because trust is something we could meet somebody today, right? And the thought process that all of a sudden they're, 3 weeks from now when they become a client, they're going to trust us with everything. Yeah. And I think that what it comes down to it is that we don't necessarily need their full, trust necessarily. I think they just, I always position as you just need to believe me. Believe that the advice that we're giving to you is sound, right? And that it's in your best interest. And over time, I think once they see that in action, right? They see over and over again, whether it's a tough period in the markets or it's just random, I don't want to say random, but advice along the way that's connected to their financial lives, and they can think to themselves, oh, you know what, without Ben, Jim, or the team in place, I probably wouldn't have made that decision in the way that we ultimately made it collectively. And over time, I think there's that buildup of trust that happens. But for anybody that's listening and pondering, meeting with a financial advisor or entering into a relationship with a financial advisor, I think that it can be difficult, but I think ultimately that you have to take the step of, all right, well, following the advice, that it has to make sense to you, but following the advice and believing that person unless they give you a reason not to, obviously.
Yeah, and I think a lot of these relationships that we've established over time, I like how you said that, is believe in me. Believe in me, and I'm going to earn your trust over time. And over that time, those decisions are actually going to be a lot easier for you to make. And you're going to say, you know what, Ben, Jim, I'm not even going to question it. I might ask a couple of questions for clarification purposes, but I believe in you. I trust you. And really, to me, that's when I realize that I have our best clients.
Yeah. And that can be difficult too, because when you work with someone for a long period of time, and again, going back to the example of how emotional we are as human beings. Another story that comes into mind, we had a client back when COVID hit, and she had been a client for a pretty long period of time. Very successful business owner, and COVID really kind of, when the markets fell in the speed, right, in which they fell, I remember the comment that she made was, I just don't want to go through another 2008 and 2009, referencing the financial industry collapse back in 07 to 09. And I remember my answer to her was, and I think you know this because we've talked about it before, I don't know how far the market's going to fall, because you don't when you're in the middle of it, right? And I don't know for how long. All I know is that they will recover at some point. Just so happened the recovery started at the 3-week point, right? It fell and then worked its way back up, which was welcome, certainly. But she ended up leaving. And she ended up, against our counsel, going to cash. And then, wanting to get back in by the end of the year, which, again, the markets had gotten straight up in the air. And we tried to counsel her right from the beginning that says, this is not a good idea. We can certainly understand everybody, during that time is in a little bit of a panic in terms of not knowing what's going on with COVID. And but sometimes you make decisions that are not in your best interest. And we as financial advisors try to do everything that we can, short of, standing up on the table and yelling and screaming about, you got to stay in, this is a bad decision. But that's just another example of how you can have a client for a long time, the trust has been built up, but something happens and, not successful in terms of keeping them involved, and it's unfortunate. But again, all comes back to the central theme of, hey, believe me. Believe that when we tell you, I don't know how far it's going to fall this time, and I don't know for how long, but history has shown that it always recovers. And those are the types of decisions that we are all faced with and will into perpetuity.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that we've gotten really good at as a company, is setting those expectations early on. And a lot of times we come right out and say, we don't know when the market's going to go through a correction. We don't know when the market's going to go through a giant rally. Yeah. But we are going to stay the course because we know in the long term that's the best thing to do. And if we go back to those COVID days, you have one of my favorite Beck quotes that you said on our first podcast that you should probably pull up, and maybe we could replay it here, that, and I'm not going to quote it perfectly, but you came right out and said, I don't know when the market's going to recover, but when it does, I think you used the word, it's going to be epic. And that has always stuck out in my mind of that confidence that, yes, the markets are efficient, they are going to get through this, they always do come out on the other side stronger. And getting a client to see that and understand that while they're going through that is really hard. Yeah, and it's really hard.
It's incredibly hard when you're in the middle of it, and it affects us too, right? When the markets are down, and of course, what happens is that the financial media revs up their engines, and they're just going crazy on TV and print about the end of the world. It is incredibly difficult to keep your focus, right? As investors, and going back to what does a financial advisor actually do? I think it is in a large part that bringing your focus back to where it should be, building that resilience inside someone so over time they come to understand it's eliminating these distractions and just being able to, however painful it is in the moment, continuing to take that next step forward and forward and forward. And I was meeting with just the other day, I was meeting with a younger couple, in their early to mid 20s, I had this realization that because it's not often we meet with we meet with usually if they're in their 20s, it's the children of clients of ours. These didn't happen to be, but great couple. But it occurred to me that hey, they're going to be on this earth, just them, probably for another 70 or so years.
Right.
I mean, 70 years. And how great is it that they're meeting with a financial advisor in their early to mid 20s, and how much of a benefit it will be for them just to have their money compounding and uninterrupted, over long periods of time is just incredible. There, and it also occurred to me too that over 70 years, we've over the last 70 years or pretty close, we have had 3 episodes where the markets have fallen at or greater than 50% at one time. So think about that. You have $1 million, $5 million, whatever you have. It's cut in half. It appears to be disappear, for a certain amount of time. In these circumstances, you look at your statements and they're down more than 50%. Pretty mind-boggling, but that's happened 3 times in the last about 70 years. And so when you think about the role of a financial advisor, you think about all the little ones we go through over time, but you think about those and what it takes to not lose it, as an investor. And that's just something we were talking about before. That's not something that is done unless you're talking to a human being that understands what that feeling is like. And we were talking about AI before, right? And the question that we get from time to time is, well, at some point will artificial intelligence replace the financial advisor? And again, in the context of what we do every day, there isn't a chance in hell that we can be replaced, because particularly during those times, I really think you need a human being to look you in the eyes when your portfolio is down 57% in March of 2009 to say, I understand everything that you're going through, and that's the worst possible decision you can make for your financial future, and I'm not going to let you do that. I don't know if a computer, I suppose, can say that. Computer is not a human being, will never be a human being. And that's, when it comes to trust and those things that we're talking about here, not something that you can replicate. Yeah.
So I think we're 5 years past your last when the markets recover quote. It's going to be epic. I think we just got another Beck quote here that there's no chance in hell that AI is going to take over the role of our financial, what we do at least as financial advisors.
Right. There's different aspects of the financial world. We use it today.
Right.
AI assists us in putting our portfolios together. Absolutely. Right. AI assists us in a lot of different things within our company. AI does not assist us in the conversations that we have back and forth with clients. And I just don't, you'll never be able to convince me that can be replaced. Human to human interaction. No way.
I know, as you're saying some of these things about meeting with the younger professional, I often wish I could rewind 20 some years, and we talked a little bit about this when we had all of our staff in last week, is what was your first job? Right? But what we didn't ask our staff was, if you could go back in time and save that money from your first job, what would that be worth today?
Ooh, that's good.
That's a really good exercise we could have gone through. And I know that my first W-2 paying job was working at, doesn't even exist anymore, MVP Sports.
Really? Oh, wow. That's funny.
and God forbid they had me fitting kids for hockey helmets. I didn't even put on a hockey helmet in my life, but I was sizing kids for that and getting paid to do that. But if I could go back in time and start saving that money as a 16 or 17-year-old, what would that portfolio look like today, right? I mean, that would have been nice if my parents at that time would have encouraged me to do that with their financial advisor. We all could have been working together.
What a great exercise. I mean, think about that. Kind of similar as the example of the folks that I met the other day is that, well, you were probably in your teens, right, when you were working MVP.
Correct.
I mean, think about even the small amounts of money you were probably making, but if you just shaved off like 25% of that and put it in a Roth IRAs running around, right?
They weren't.
No.
Nope.
But some sort of investment vehicle where your money can compound over time. It's really incredible. It's really incredible. I had a job. I'll tell you about it. I had a job at Amato's sandwich shop when I was in my teens, and they had the best Italian chicken parms and everything, and it was a running joke with all my friends in high school that, so what Amados would let you do is that if you work there and you want to eat lunch or buy stuff, you could charge it back and they would pull it out of your paycheck. So it was a running joke is that I would never get a paycheck because I would eat all of my earnings at Amados.
Oh,
it was pretty incredible. Yeah, it's so funny.
Well, and wrapping up this, why'd you become a financial advisor?
Oh, boy. It's a good question. It's a great question. I was, as you know, played a little bit of baseball professionally right out of college, and really had my heart set on going into the FBI or the DEA, something in my mind that I thought was really, really exciting. I got the opportunity to, through a client of my wife was a physical therapist at the time out of college, and one of her clients was a financial advisor, and he made the comment to her that if he's ever done with baseball and was interested in the financial world, he should give me a call.
Yeah.
And so ultimately, my personal entry into the financial world wasn't certainly with any of the perspective that I have today, right? It had everything to do with being in a field that was exciting and electric, right? And the movies that were on TV back then, like Wall Street, and Boiler Room. And
Great movies.
Oh, yeah. But the idea that there was that level of sophistication if you're involved in the financial markets, and that always appealed to me. And I know after the first couple of years of being in the industry, I realized pretty quickly about how much impact you can have as someone very highly trusted within a family, right? And so that really shifted my perspective a lot. But long-winded answer, to your short question about why, the excitement of connecting the financial markets with individuals was always appealing, and that's just of course been refined over time and just become a lot stronger. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the best things or best decisions I made early on in my life was going to Northeastern University because of their co-op program.
Oh yeah.
And I was originally going to be an elementary school teacher, which those of you that know me, that was probably a good decision. But my sister was working at an investment firm and introduced me to the idea of getting an internship at the time it was Payne Weber. And I said, I know nothing about the markets. Why would I want to do this? And she continued to tell me a story how my parents were quote unquote burned by a financial advisor and taken advantage of. And she said, you know what, I think you can establish a lot of trust with people and you would be really, really good at developing those relationships, and introduced me to the world of investing. And it wasn't planning, it was strictly looking at individual stocks, and understanding the markets was what my co-ops were. But I began to understand the impact that an individual as an advisor can have on a family's life, and I was like, I want that.
Sure.
I want to be part of that. It's I could sit here and tell you that I'm a good guy and I'm trustworthy all day long, but to demonstrate that and truly help people achieve a goal, I'm not sure there's any other industry that would have allowed me to have that impact on an individual's life. Yeah. So to be in such a trusted space where we're impacting so many lives, generations were impacting.
Having the opportunity to do that over and over again, right?
Over and over again. And every single client we meet with has a unique story, has a unique plan. Couldn't be a better industry to be part of. So it just ends up being just the absolute perfect role for me.
Laughing when you're saying the origin, because I've told you this before, but so Jim and I both went to Northeastern University in Boston, and we were both at one time incoming freshmen on the football team. And I remember when we got our a media guide or whatever it was that the Northeastern football sent home, and it had profiles of all of the incoming freshmen. And my dad was reading through yours, and it said seeks to go into elementary education. My parents are both school teachers, and he couldn't get over the fact that you've got this 6'5", 200 and some odd pound lineman. And in his mind, the vision of, oh my gosh, imagine this guy, Jim, probably call you Jim Bode at the time, not Bode, but walking into an elementary school classroom at that size, he'd scare the heck out of all the kids. I thought that was incredible.
Well, I will say that path led me down to meeting my wife on my first co-op, so I think it was worth it.
Yeah, there you go.
So your dad can make fun of me all he wants.
All right, perfect. Yeah. Awesome. Well, I think we covered a lot today, right?
Yeah.
But one of the biggest, I think, things that we talked about was talking about this role of the financial advisor and how there's just all these different definitions that people have, and I think a lot of them are based, as we said, on their own experience until they reach us, right?
Yeah.
And they understand, where was my focus, and where they come to learn where my focus should be, and they've got a group of people around them that are not interested in necessarily just producing a financial plan or putting together a portfolio only, but guiding them for the rest of their lives, and then they're whether they have children or they have a legacy that they want to complete. They have a very different perspective once they meet with us, and so great discussion today, man.
Yeah, it was great, and I think we brought up a few new topics for some of our next podcasts as well, which is fun.
Awesome. Great. Well, thank you everybody for listening. Looking forward to having a few more of these in the summertime, and I hope everybody enjoys their summertime as well. Thank you.
Bye-bye.